Welcome, everybody. It's great to see everybody this afternoon of what I hope will be a really productive conversation and a bit of an update of where we are with our Aspire strategic planning development and certainly conversation about the framework that's been established. Before we begin, however, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. I invite you all to consider your own position with regard to the land where you live, work, and gather. As we make this land acknowledgement, it is also important that we continue to do the work to address systemic and historic injustices. Well, thank you everybody for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come together to chat a little bit about the work that's been done over the better part of the last year to help shape our next strategic plan as a university. There's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today, and really wanted to provide this as an opportunity for people to better understand what's transpired to date, but also really the processes that we're looking at moving forward on into the future as well. So it's not simply about a standalone strategic document, it's about a number of key things that we want to do, that we aspire to do as an institution moving forward. So what we're going to do is I'm going to provide a broader update of things. I think everybody probably has hopefully had a chance to read the hundreds of pages of the framework document that we provided for everybody. That in a way kind of captures some of the things that we've heard and a bit of the strategy moving forward, but we'll add a little bit of clarity on this today because it is a working document. What we will also do too after I've finished my presentation, and if we can hold off your questions until we're done, we will have an opportunity for Q&A related to the things that we've talked about today. We do have a few colleagues that are with us that have been really doing a lot of the heavy lifting on where we are to this point, and in particular, Fraser Fathers is with us. Fraser, if you want to put your hand up. Fraser's been fantastic. He's essentially been our Aspire manager for the last year or so, really helping to kind of put pieces together for where we are today. So I wanted to begin by highlighting too that we are certainly what you have to date is essentially a framework. And those of you that really don't clearly understand what a framework is, it's just a work in progress. And it really summarizes, to a large extent, the direction and the key elements of what the plan eventually will include. Trust me, our strategic plan is not going to be 150 pages. It's going to be 20-ish pages in length that really frames the direction that we are heading as an institution. The language I want to highlight to everybody is in the framework document, it's not final. We've had a number of consultations and conversations over the past few weeks since we did release the framework before the holidays, and we've got some really good feedback. And so we look forward to hearing from all of you. If not today, want to really continue to highlight to everybody that you can provide your input to this important process, both through the engageuwindsor.ca website, as well as stratplanning at uwindsor.ca. Certainly look forward to hearing from all of you. If you do have concerns about things that you hear, love to hear that, but also we love to also hear suggestions of things that we can do if you've got concerns about specific things as well. Want to really recognize too that the consultation that we've done over the better part of the last year has been probably somewhat unique to what you would typically do in a strategic planning process. And so there's a couple things that I wanted to really highlight. We've done a lot more than we normally would do, and I think it was really important for us to do that for a number of reasons. As we've navigated the uncertainty of the last 3 years through this difficult global pandemic, certainly wanting to hear our voices across our institution and get a perspective of them of how they're feeling about the university and what we can do differently, what we can do better, and what we can build on from some of the successes that we've seen recently. but also really as an opportunity to really get a perspective from all the diverse voices that exist within our university community. So I did want to highlight that through the consultative processes that we've done both virtually as well as face-to-face, we also had a number of hybrid opportunities for consultations. We did have a chance to hear specifically from over 1,000 students here at the University of Windsor. More than 700 faculty and staff expressed perspectives, again, not just recently, but over the last several months. We've heard specifically from over 120 of our University of Windsor alumni. We had a real significant approach to really consulting with our community members, many of who have had longstanding relationships with the University of Windsor, but we've certainly done a lot of consultation with more than 40 different external organizations, and also more than 360 community members. And I was joking with Fraser about this the other day. If anybody of you had a chance to go to the farmers market at all this past summer and early spring, maybe you bumped into Fraser, who was there getting feedback from our community about things that they think the university needs to really focus on differently moving forward, and that was really useful. All of that consultation did arrive at more than 38,000 data points that really make up a lot of the attributes of our mission, vision, value statements, but also what we heard about some of the things that we have to do better as an institution, what are some of the strategic priorities that we can reflect on differently as an institution, and then what are those big opportunities, but also how we have to, I think, build in a strong structure of goal setting as an institution. So we'll talk a little bit about that this afternoon. So as I said, it's a bit of a new approach, but one that I think was really vital for where we are today as a university. What we heard loud and clear from everybody, though, is that it needs to be about our people. Our vision as an institution and our growth as a university needs to focus on fundamentally, at its core, our students, our staff, our faculty, our alumni, our community partners as well, and making sure that we are an institution that focuses that on every clear decision we make as an institution. I know everybody's not always going to be happy with the decisions the university makes on every different front, but fundamental to the strategic priorities that you will see in a few minutes, the values that you will also see, people is the foundation for that within our university. So here's where we are right now. And again, I want to highlight as well to everybody that every strategic plan often does include a mission and a vision statement. And what I'll do is I'll just simply read these. These certainly continue to be a work in progress, Bev. We are looking forward to getting feedback from everybody, but certainly the way that we've landed. And again, I want everybody, maybe before I highlight this, I want to maybe pull everybody back, I think 12 years ago when we did our last strategic plan. As part of that strat plan, we also identified a vision and a mission statement for the institution. What we found when we started to capture this in wordsmith, those two new statements, we realized that they were fairly well aligned with the mission and vision that we did back in 2010, 2011. But it was amazing, though, that nobody, when we did consult with them, nobody actually even remembered what our mission and vision statements were. And so it really led us to recognize an important attribute that we need to make sure we instill in our strategic planning is follow-up and accountability. And you'll see that resonate with all of the things that we're talking about today. But really what we've landed on, again, with the ability to wordsmith, and we're getting plenty of people providing perspectives of this, is that our mission as an institution is to empower positive change through regionally and globally engaging inquiry, learning, scholarship, creation, and research. And our vision statement as an institution is as a globally connected anchor institution, and we've heard from a few people that the word anchor has different connotations with some people than it does with others, so we'd love your feedback on that. In the Windsor-Essex region, the University of Windsor strives to transform the circumstances of our students, people, and communities. We will engage with regional and global challenges through impactful research, relevant teaching, creative endeavors, and positive relationship building. So give some thought to that. We would love to hear your perspectives on that in the Q&A following. We also did a lot of conversations, through our consultations around what our core values as an institution were. And again, just for those of you that maybe haven't thought through this a lot, our values are what are the underlying beliefs that really guide our decisions and actions as an institution. And they really, in many ways, kind of provide a description of what the institution stands for and how we intend to kind of focus our activities moving forward. And so, again, a number of kind of key areas were identified in our values. In the document itself, as we start to wordsmith it, you will see more clarity in terms of what each of these values represents. But certainly, we heard from a lot of people around our commitment to academic excellence, focusing on community-engaged impact, continuing our commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion, also our commitment to indigenization, truth and reconciliation. Prioritizing people, as we've talked about already, has got to be a core value of our institution. Engaging students and building student engagement and student experience with the majority of decision-making that we do as an institution. A strong focus around sustainability from an environmental perspective. Openness to change, and then trustworthiness with a large focus around our financial resource allocation considerations as well. So certainly those are where we are with respect to the current framework values, and certainly, as we said, as the plan starts to be put together in its final draft, certainly there will be better clarity about what each of those represent. So I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about what really the core pillars of our strategic plan involve. And really the way to think about this is that there's really three fundamental aspects that we wanted to kind of frame in our next strategic plan. And these are what we're calling foundational commitments, strategic priorities, and also strategic opportunities. Now, those of you that certainly are questioning, well, what's a foundational commitment? And I think what we heard from just about everybody that we consulted with is that there's things at this institution that we have to do better with. There's things that we have to really be able to deal with in an incremental fashion before we can move on as an institution. So really these are specific actions that really identify and address and move forward on bottlenecks or gaps where campus practices are either not working or really we spend too much time with. So, I'm assuming everybody, I see a few people smiling. I think everybody is well aware that there's things that we as an institution need to do a better job in terms of being able to support our community, our people, our staff, students, and faculty. And so one of the key areas that we really feel that we need to make significant progress over the next 5 years is really building strong metrics and accountabilities and goals around a number of foundational commitments that the institution needs to actually set goals around. I don't think we've done a really good job of dealing with this historically, and certainly from our community members, we heard loud and clear that before we can start to think about big opportunities as an institution, before we can start to build on strategic goals as an institution, there's things that we need to do better. And so we've got a number of examples that I'll walk you through. And again, our plan is to also develop a strong approach for implementation of these foundational commitments. These will be my goals, these will be goals of the VPs, these will be goals of the deans, other senior administrators, but all of us play a role in beginning to resolve some of these foundational commitments that exist within our institution that need to certainly be rectified as best as possible. Are we going to resolve everything in 5 years? Probably not, but I think we have to identify accountability and a commitment to really being able to minimize the impact that some of these have on our ability to strive as an institution. The next area is, again, leading from, once we can build on these foundational commitments, it's strategic priorities. And so simply these are the goals and transformative priorities that we are going to embed in our decision-making to help further our institutional mission. And certainly these are the key things that we've heard a lot from people about these. And again, they're fairly people-centric, but also really do create some real important considerations for us to really make sure that all of us are aware of what these strategic priorities are. I will highlight to everybody too, as we start to think about budgetary processes moving forward within the institution, these strategic priorities will play a big role in terms of how we best move forward with resource commitments or new areas of investment as an institution as well. So once you've dealt with some of the strategic foundational commitments and also the strategic priorities, the next piece is really creating a number of strategic opportunities as well. Aspire, the strategic plan, will not contain a lot of detail about these strategic opportunities. These will come through the implementation of other planning activities that we are going to be proposing for our university. Right now, as an institution, we are absent of a strategic academic plan. We are absent of a strategic research plan. And so there are opportunities to really start to capture our vision, our commitment to grow as an institution with those plans as well. So we'll talk a little bit about the cascading pieces that will following Aspire. The one really cool thing, though, given the nature of consultation that we've done over the past year, our ability to be able to synthesize what we've heard and what we've learned into a strategic academic plan or a strategic research plan should happen very efficiently. We don't need to go and consult again with our community on the SRP or the SAP. These are things that certainly we're going to be starting very soon and then building up some of the specific opportunities or strategic opportunities through those activities moving forward. But also, as we've talked about, building in a framework for how we can measure our success in achieving some of these goals that we've established as an institution. So those foundational commitments, and again, as we've talked about, these really are addressing gaps, bottlenecks, impediments to to things that we all deal with as an institution, and finding ways of making it so we can work more effectively and efficiently as everyone at our institution. I hear from students all the time about some of those foundational challenges. I hear from staff, faculty. I hear from many people. And again, as we've said, I think we need to be really deliberate about making sure that we create accountabilities, but also we create processes for getting better at doing some of these things. And as I've said already, it's certainly going to take time, but certainly also a significant commitment institutionally as well. A few of the things that we more broadly heard about foundational commitments that need to be addressed. Data. We are absent of a data strategy as a university. I don't think we use data that well to make informed decisions as a university. I'm not sure if there's always fully trust in the data that we're using for making decisions. So we've had a number of conversations over the past few months about really starting to collect and measure and highlight in a transparent way data about our institution and use it to help us measure how far we're moving forward in a positive way and use it as a quantitative measure for some of the goals that we establish. So a data strategy is something that we're going to be talking a little bit about. Certainly, we hear all the time we have to improve how we tell our story as a university, so improving communications and knowledge transfer, being able to take some of the really fantastic, impactful research we do as an institution and find ways of disseminating that to our broader community and stakeholders as well. I've always appreciated this point about connecting, reconnecting, and enhancing collaborations. As a community-engaged institution, we need to think about the value that partnerships bring to everything that we do as an institution. And so doing that in a coordinated, well-thought-out way is something that we've made strides on over the past few years, and we want to continue to build on that. But that certainly also is an impediment to helping us move forward. We have to get better at that. Here's one that I'm sure all of you can appreciate: improving institutional processes and coordination of services. So those are things that, again, I think that we all need to own. And we're going to be creating, I think, a really well thought out process around how we can do that more effectively, how we can build in processes, how we can assess the efficiencies of processes, the turnaround times of different things as well. And certainly speaking on behalf of all of the VPs and AVPs and deans at the institution, I know there's a strong commitment of being able to measure that and show success over the next few years as well. Next is supporting people through enhanced HR as well as leadership development. And I hope everybody in the room did have a chance, certainly the staff and faculty that are here, to participate in the employee engagement survey that we did earlier this year. It was not meant to be a one-time only effort. It was meant to be something that we can measure ourselves in and show progress in terms of how we engage with our community, our staff and faculty in particular. And so, you know, I've heard from a lot of people about we need to do better. We need to really create a campus community that there is strong support. There's people that are really committed to supporting colleagues in really significant ways. But also the fact that we need to create opportunities for professional development, for growth of everybody, and then do that within a really important framework for how we inspire people to progress through our institution. So really finding a way to really get better at how we support our people across the institution. As you're all well aware, we've made some changes to human resources over the past while. It's certainly, there's going to be a number of other commitments to help support how we create a university community that embraces our staff and faculty and provides supports for them as best as we can. And then finally, I hear from a lot of you about the fact that we just need to do a better job of making sure that our infrastructure, you know, the ability for us to deliver our programs in the classroom, in our research labs, in common spaces, and have it so that our infrastructure really is able to support our people. I know there's been a lot of history of problems with things, but certainly finding ways for us to incrementally mitigate some of those infrastructure challenges has got to be another implementation priority for us as well. Next slide, please. So, you know, again, we've heard from people in terms of hundreds of different commitments, foundational commitments, again, as we've talked about, data governance, communications, you know, approaches around celebrating successes as an institution, enhancing social engagement, streamlining processes, as we've said. As you're all well aware, too, we are implementing our first ever employee mental health strategy that we heard loud and clear in our employee engagement survey, and there's many other things that we have to do to build on top of that as well. Again, as we've talked about, enhancing building classroom maintenance, and again, also prioritizing safety and accessibility in campus spaces and in virtual platforms as well. So a lot of things in that place. Some might say, well, that's not strategic, that's not bold, that's not really that significant in terms of forward thinking. I do think that these things we need to own, we need to be committed to getting better at, and we need to measure our success largely based on our ability to have it so that these foundational commitments are heading in the right direction. So certainly that's taking up a key pillar within our institution moving forward. Strategic priorities are really, as we've talked about already, goals and transformative priorities within specific areas of institutional practice. These are certainly what we heard from all of our consultation was certainly advancing bold, impactful research and creative activity. Certainly that resonated with a lot of people. Becoming an increasingly equitable, diverse, inclusive, and just campus. As we've already talked about too, continuing the journey towards truth and reconciliation as an institution, ensuring high quality, effective, relevant teaching, learning, and student experience for everybody. So putting as a strategic priority the heart of student experience in everything that we do, fostering an engaged, healthy, and sustainable campus, and then finally generating local and global impact through partnerships and community engagement as well. So these are the key strategic priorities that will drive a lot of our decision making over the next few years as well. And then leading into that are certainly, as we've talked about, these broader strategic opportunities that won't really be identified in the Aspire plan, but really be coordinated more through some of the cascading plans that we'll talk about in a few minutes. We probably heard from community members about 20-ish or so big opportunities that people think that we really need to take advantage of. And again, what we've attempted to do with this slide, and certainly in the framework document, is highlight what are the things that we need to build on in coordination with our foundational commitments and our strategic priorities. What are the things that we need to use to really to help the criteria for making decisions about what strategic opportunities are in front of us? And I will highlight to everybody that we'd love to hear back from everybody, and we will be certainly keeping opportunities to really get your ideas around what some of these opportunities are. Some of them could be, as simple as we want to be, the Canadian leader in undergraduate research, and then building in a strong framework for how we do that. Certainly, as you're well aware, we're pretty excited about the partnership that we've established with the Windsor County Health Unit. They're moving to campus here in a little over a year. And with that partnership, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes, comes a lot of opportunities around student experience, around really coordinating our community health research in a more positive way, sharing of research opportunities in partnership with them, building in strong community engagement around public health, knowledge mobilization, knowledge transfer, but also having aligned academic programs in public health that would be consistent with respect to providing student experiential learning opportunities for students through WeChu as well. So that's one example of what might be many, but what we're really highlighting in the plan is that we've got these foundational commitments that need to really take priority, and also these strategic priorities need to be really coordinated to help us move forward on some of these larger strategic opportunities. So what I've kind of highlighted a couple times already today is this commitment around cascading strategies. And we've been talking about this for some time, that the Aspire strategic plan will not be a silo by itself, but it'll be more of a broader kind of shift in terms of how we think about planning as an institution. So as we've talked about the institutional strategic plan, we hope to get completed over the next few months. Immediately, we're going to be moving forward on a coordinated strategic academic plan and strategic research plan. As you're all well aware, we are in the final stages of appointing a new provost as well as a new vice president of research innovation. And we will certainly have it so that those two important leadership roles will be coordinating these plans collectively and simultaneously as well. But again, a lot of the consultation that we've done to date does provide really solid foundational pieces for helping those plans move forward. And also, as we've talked about, provides those opportunities around what are the things that we can build on and grow as an institution. But there's also a number of other plans that we're looking at implementing in the very near future. Certainly a community engagement plan. We've been certainly holding off on Aspire to establish the internationalization plan, working with Dr. Jacobs in terms of starting to lay the foundation for an indigenization plan for the institution, something that's badly needed. Certainly, as we've talked about, the employee engagement survey is leading to a number of next steps that have already started, which I'm really excited about. Dr. Betford's team has been working on developing the framework for an EDI plan. Sustainability is a key priority for our institution, and building that as a commitment moving forward, and also a campus master plan as well. So when you think about cascading, think about the framework that what is in Aspire will then cascade down to the SAP and the SRP, and then those other plans will be aligned with it as well, too. Okay, next slide. So in terms of realizing the plans, certainly as we've talked about, the cascading strategy development is going to be key for us. We've already had a number of conversations with others about how we best do this. So this is not, again, as we've said, a one-time only thing. It's got to be a shift in terms of how we think as well. Also, part of this, too, is really developing a clear engagement strategy so that we own this. And so I know public relations and public affairs and communications has already started to really build in how we establish that strong engagement strategy so that people participate in this. Also key is how we're going to resource this. Certainly, the priorities that are established through Aspire, as well as through these cascading plans, will certainly be the foundation for resource allocation in the coming years as well. So a lot of the things that we talk about in terms of foundational commitments, well, certainly we will do our best to try to make sure that we're putting resources behind some of those goals that we established. When we talk about identified and distributed leadership, what we heard loud and clear with our employee engagement survey was that we need to do a better job of performance management, performance assessment of employees within the institution. Goal setting and making sure too that we're measuring progress towards those goals for individual employees, but for units collectively as well. So when you think about how we want to measure the success of Aspire and some of the cascading plans, we also need to make sure that those goals that we identify in those plans need to be embedded in my performance goals as the President and Vice Chancellor, the performance goals of all of our Vice Presidents, our AVPs, the Deans, and others within the institution, to make sure that we all see individual but also collective ownership in being able to move these things forward. We've not done a great job of connecting these historically, but certainly this framework that we want to build in around Aspire really requires us to do that. And I'm really happy that certainly we're going to be in a position to start to do that more effectively moving forward. As we've talked about, data strategy, how we measure our success in terms of metrics is going to be key. And so that is an initiative that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but is one that's already starting to gain some momentum as well. We're also going to be developing, as we've talked about, the foundational commitments plan, and then certainly developing metrics for how we measure the success in all of these activities moving forward. So for us, it's not all about doing an Aspire plan, putting it on a shelf and collecting dust for the next 5 years. It's got to be something that lives and breathes every day, and certainly having accountabilities with that. So my performance will be strongly aligned with that. The VPs will be as well. We'll be reporting to Senate, to the Board of Governors, but also more broadly to the community in terms of the progress that we've made, in terms of being able to achieve some of the goals that we've set forward as well, too. So that's something that we're hoping that all of you can participate in moving forward as we really start to make sure that there's strong ownership of the things that we've heard and seen as part of the consultations over the past year. Just a little bit about the evolution of the metrics. Again, as I've said, we've got this cascading approach to things. I want everybody to recognize, too, that Aspire will be in many ways the foundational document, as we've talked about. So for the most part, the metrics within Aspire will largely be process-based metrics that we're going to be doing this in this time frame. We're going to be moving forward on this initiative. And really some of the clarity in terms of more maybe quantitative measures of goals and success will be embedded in the documents that will follow, in particular, strategic academic plan, strategic research plan, that we hope to get completed in the first quarter of 2024. There's already a lot of really important information that we've collected that will set the stage for those documents to follow in the coming months as well. Certainly, as we've talked about already, other plans are being developed, the EDI plan, the international framework, the Indigenous plan, the strategic enrollment plan is happening as we speak and moving forward, and then sustainability plan. These are all going to be coordinated under the broader Aspire approach moving forward. And again, metrics are going to be built within these plans moving forward. And as we've talked about, tracking the foundational commitments we're making as an institution, and then also annual reporting, as we've said, to Senate, Board, and our broader community. And for us to be measuring our success in a transparent way and being able to applaud when we do things really well, but also making sure, too, that we create accountabilities when we don't. So really the next steps for everybody, and certainly we look forward to getting feedback from all of you on this broader strategy, is community feedback for the framework that you've already seen a copy of is going to be possible through the 27th of January. So I think the portal is going to be open for a couple more weeks. But also we're going to allow opportunities for people to provide broader feedback to the Aspire website, through March, where we just want to hear your thoughts on this. And then again, I think as we've talked about already, making sure that people are aware that this is simply not just a single document, but a broader institutional commitment to planning around our people moving forward. Certainly our goal is to have it so that the strategic plan will be endorsed by both our Senate at the University of Windsor and our Board of Governors in March of 2023, so in a few months. And then foundational commitment and implementation work is going to begin in April. So there's going to be a number of things, and we will be looking for community feedback on this. But again, those foundational commitments that we spoke about already will start to move forward. Goals will be established through each. There'll be a working group established to kind of help support this. And again, this will all be publicly communicated in terms of what those commitments are as well. Certainly, as we've talked about too, the data strategy will begin immediately to really start to, I think, support how we think and how we share and how we utilize data as a university more effectively moving forward. And again, how we do it in a transparent way. Certainly the engagement strategy work is beginning right away. I know PAC has already been hard at work trying to think about how we best really get people thinking about this kind of more broader perspective of planning. And then certainly cascading plans, as we've talked about, are going to happen in the very near future. Certainly we've already begun consultation with Indigenous partners and communities. I've had a chance to work really closely with Dr. Jacobs on a lot of that consultation so far, and certainly that's going to develop the framework that we've speaking about today. And as we've said, the strategic academic plan, the strategic research plan work will begin as soon as July of 2023 as well. So a lot of things there to kind of absorb today. Just really wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to come and kind of get a sense of what the strategic planning process is all about. Love to hear from anyone in terms of what you think are the things that if we've missed anything. This is really meant to be more of a framework to support how we move forward collectively as an institution. But it's going to take strong commitments by everybody. But certainly, I can speak on behalf of the senior administration that there's certainly a commitment to recognize the importance of how we implement strong foundational commitments on those things that aren't working, and then also at the same time how we aspire to do bigger and better things, but do it in a much more coordinated way as an institution, maybe than we have in the past. But also, clearly, it's having it so that we have a document that lives and breathes, and that we measure, and then we grow from as an institution as well. So thank you, everybody, for your time. More than happy to answer any questions or comments or thoughts that you have on this, or things that maybe you would like to get a different perspective on as well, too. So thank you. Kat, I see your hand up. Okay, Kat, do you mind using the mic so we can, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make that look so dramatic as I was running back in. I just wanted to clarify, and I know you're not going to put this language in the documentation, but the social engagements and being centered around people, that we're on the same page, that includes food and parties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good point. Yeah.
Explain to you how much of the consultation data was about food and parties. So I'm just saying.
And if you could, if you're asking your question, maybe if you can just introduce yourself as well, too.
Good day. My name's Donovan. I'm trying to finish my 4th degree here. I'd like you, because I've asked you and you promised to meet with me prior and did not and have not since, through repeated communications, to have the university no longer arrest people on campus for using their formally approved disability accommodations in the classroom or any campus activity. I wish for you to clean up the mess that preceded you, but is still ongoing in your term. And I've been here a lot longer than you have, and I see a lot of fertilizer, and I hope something grows, but I really doubt it on when you say engagement. Spent 15 years trying to get accessibility on campus. I've lost faith in the university. Your actions do not agree with your words. When you look at the rules or processes to do something, they appear more to prevent it than to allow it. For years, the university's had a problem about recording on campus. And they're approaching it the completely first faith. You're trying to prevent people. And these days and times, everyone has a cell phone. It's a fact, you're going to be recorded. And particularly when you use that to prevent people with disabilities from using their accommodations. And I just want to, I've asked to engage for 20 years. I expect too much. Yeah, I actually expect you, the university, to do something. And I want you to change and use the word engagement as a verb, not as a noun or a theoretical concept. And I look forward to hearing you in the near future. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Donovan, for those comments. And certainly, you know, we've talked a little bit today about foundational commitments. I do recognize that accessibility and supporting our people is got to be something that we just don't talk about, that we actually demonstrate actions towards as well. Any other questions or comments from anybody in terms of the process that we're looking at moving forward? Is there anything that people heard today that they're confused by? Any thoughts around this? Again, I know that you know, as you're all well aware, we've done plans in the past. We've done certainly grand challenges. We've used those approaches for how we want to move. But the one thing that I'll be honest that I've been concerned about is we just really haven't integrated some of these plans in terms of how we think and how we function and how we live every day. So those are things that I think we just need to make sure that we just don't simply go through the motions of doing that, but as I've mentioned to Donovan, that we actually have to have actions that follow what commitments we put down on paper. Go ahead, Camille.
Hi, good afternoon. Camille Armour, MGO FOSS. Dr. Gordon, could you expound a bit in terms of the priorities, like that process? We saw a lot today under all of the categories, but if you could just provide a little bit more detail, whether it's who is there, who is being consulted, and just a little bit of a timeline, let's say, on the priorities for that implementation, the process for the prioritization. I mean,
right. So, Bev, where could I start with this? Because there's a lot of stuff in Camille's question. I guess the first thing is, and maybe I'll pass it over to Fraser to highlight just some of that, and then I can chime in as he speaks. Yeah.
That's a great question. So the priority development really started with a scan of other institutions' strategic plans. So we started with about 20 plus of the most recent strategic plans across the country, just to make sure that we're sort of in the ballpark of, you know, are there our 6 priorities the same or similar to other institutions? And generally speaking, they are. Everything else from those priorities came from what we heard in this process. So that initial survey back in January of last year, which really kicked off this process, we asked, you know, what do you envision the university doing? What does 10 years from now or 5 years from now, what would have changed if we were successful with a strategic plan? Those very high level things. We were able to start segmenting those across into various buckets: teaching and learning excellence, research and creative activities, EDI, indigenization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then that led to a number of discussion sessions and conversation cafes where they've been refined subsequently. And then there's been strategic conversations with key groups across campus, deans, faculties, all the faculty councils have been engaged, various other groups have asked for us to sort of be engaged at various points in time, where, you know, there are, if you go look in the actual framework document, there's sub-bullets underneath there. And if you go look at within the hundreds of pages, there's about 10 to 15 pages for each of those strategic priorities with specific actions, specific ideas. Not all of them are going to be implemented right away or can be implemented right away, but that's really where we're starting from in that process. And so when we get to the final version of the document, you'll see some framing around those priorities, around what we heard and why we think that those priorities are important. What are some of those initial tangible actions that we think we're going to see? Sort of like a listing of key sort of strategy areas underneath each of those priorities. And then the SRP and academic plan are really going to be where those get fleshed out tactically. So, you know, and I'm just going to make something up, but if we're going to do something in a certain research area, that's going to be where that really gets determined, is in some of those subsequent cascading strategies as they go forward. The strategic plan will not set what those are at this point.
And let's recognize that we have not had a strategic academic plan as an institution. And as I said, we don't have a current strategic research plan. And our strategic research plans, I think, were bold historically, but we didn't resource allocate towards them and didn't measure our success or develop metrics for how we were going to achieve success as well. What I am planning on really building in as the SAP and the SRP come together is actually having the provost and the vice president of research actually work collectively on these two plans, because there is significant need for coordination. Student experience, student engaged research is the foundation of the research that we do as an institution. And so that's got largely an academic perspective through the provost, as well as the importance of how we build on our commitment to research, strong research metrics. So having the two of them work collectively in parallel as these plans get developed is going to be a key over the next several months, Camille, and certainly putting in clear ways at which we're going to be measuring how successful we are in achieving some of those strategic priorities, and using the exact same strategic priorities that Fraser spoke of to build the foundation for those two documents is going to be really appropriate for us moving forward as well. Question here?
Yep, Kristen Siapis from Drama. I just wanted to, I'm sitting there trying to think up like a really good question, and as I'm looking around, I'm not seeing a million people jumping up with questions, and so I want to share just positive feedback, really, that I appreciate the length of time and the depth and the 38,000 data points and everything that went into this, and I think that we really see that reflected today in things that I appreciate are the focus on those foundational pieces, acknowledging that it's the people that makes all of this work, and it's not just something that can be mandated from the top. It's something that comes all the way through every person that works in this institution, and I think that's reflected in the strategy here, and I just want to express my appreciation of that. I know that I tried to be involved in as many consultations as possible, and I see some of my thoughts reflected here, and that's really encouraging. So thank you.
Good, thank you.
A little short. Ingrid Kemo from the Office of Research Innovation. I noticed that in the mission and the vision, research was embedded into those, but I feel like it was lost in the values. And I want to see if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, so Fraser, I know it came up a lot as well too, and it wasn't just research per se, it was knowledge mobilization, it was knowledge transfer, scholarship, creative work as well.
Yeah, within the values, the academic excellence value is really sort of the umbrella under which research would be nested. And again, we could only put a list of values up on the screen today, but in the next version of the document, there will be 2-3 sentences under each of those values, really defining what they mean and how the institution is going to use that value going forward as a foundation for decision making.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a completely different question.
Okay, and this is related to the strategic plan?
No, yes, it's quite
okay.
related.
Okay.
And you talk about academic knowledge, that the creation of knowledge and the dispensing of knowledge. And I'm currently in a situation where I've acquired all the knowledge, but under your rules, I can't graduate because you don't realize certain things when you're a lifelong learner, as obviously I am. You start to accumulate knowledge and it becomes more usable. And there's no factor for that. The way you would look at college requirements that when you come in, it's quite disappointing how poorly you look down that pipe. And the other thing that, as an institution of higher learning, we should be able to hear, to have differing and even opposing positions, but to try and get through the mud and get out the door, because I think sometimes you have to look at it in several things. What did you bring to the table when you got here? What did you get while here? If your fields of knowledge are overlapping, that makes them much stronger. And many of my professors say the questions I ask are too complex, or it's a postgraduate level question, and they're not always happy with me in class. The other thing I would like to throw as a suggestion for consideration and change in teaching, do away with the PowerPoint, the talking head. Okay, you make up your PowerPoints, send them out, give them to the students, come in, and then you talk about them versus just reading off the PowerPoint for 3 hours. Engage them, because it's when you try to argue a point with someone, and I have gotten in this position where I find out I'm the one making the wrong point. And, we all have been there. And just one point, it's when my life, when I realized I had white power. Prior to me, I was oblivious, utterly and totally in any way of having power. Spent 5 months in New Orleans. And there's other things that I see I have power. I have a daughter who's about to turn 16 now. Didn't think I'd do that while doing university, but it's been dragged out. But I'm scared for her as a woman in our male-dominated cultural society. And, the newsletter is talking about women have to have grit. No, you have to have grit because you're a woman. That's the starting line.
Yep.
Thank you for listening.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions from any? Oh, here we go, sorry. Uh-oh, she's got an open book. too.
It's okay, I just like to write things down. Jocelyn Laredo, Student Accessibility Services, and co-chair of the UN Pride Committee here on campus. And so, Dr. Gordon, you talk a lot about some of the core values being equity, diversity, and inclusion, and prioritizing people. I'm one of those real big nerds who's gone through the entire Aspire document, and I'm just wondering if we're going to be including any language on 2S LGBTQ plus folks, some gender challenges that we're having on this campus. We talk about safe spaces and things, and there's a lot of folks who have reached out to our committee to talk about some of the dangerous positions that they've been in. And so I was just wondering if there was any comment on that, please.
Yeah, and that did come up, I see Fraser shaking his head, that came up a lot in the consultations as well, and having a document that we can certainly make sure that everybody feels part of and feels, again, as I think I've mentioned in the talk here today, feels safe on campus as well. And I'll be the first to admit, we do have a long way to go, but I hope much like the issues around implementation of those foundational commitments, we have to do the same with respect to making sure that we build in safety in terms of how we make decisions as an institution. That's essential.
Thank you.
Hey, Kat?
I'm back.
Yeah.
So as part of the presentation, you talked about a master plan for the campus. And so if I'm misunderstanding, but how we're building and our assets, as so to speak, in the land that the university owns. And so I think about when we led up to the Turtle Island space and the house that has been announced. And then there was an announcement about residents. And I know that there was disconnect in how that was brought about because people are like, oh, Turtle Island's only getting a house and we're building a brand new residence. And so when all of that information is not made available about all of the things that are ongoing, and there's not information about priorities and strategy, it creates a divide amongst people because everybody feels like they're fighting for those resources and those allocations. And so my feedback is to be more transparent. And I know that that type of work is generally under the purview of the Board of Governors in how we look at our assets, our capital assets. There really needs to be better communication on those things as they're happening so that people don't feel blindsided. And that really is going to tie into the trust that you want to build.
Yeah.
So I wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, and Kat, that is a great question, and one that I know that we've all struggled with in terms of how you do it. I know Jillian Heiss is here, our VP Finance and Operations, and Jillian is certainly committed, as I am, and certainly the other VPs and other senior leadership, to make sure that we think about our campus planning in a much more coordinated, longer-term way. I hope you can appreciate, though, too, that there's always challenges that we face with respect to, I could get a call later this afternoon from the federal government and say, oh, do you have a shovel-ready project that's going to happen in the next 3 months that we're prepared to give you $40 million? So we always have to have those things ready, Kat, but we also need to make sure, as we've talked about at Senate as well, that we've got a solid foundational plan around everything that we do. And again, I think having a campus master plan that involves a lot of consultation, a lot of feedback, is going to be important for us moving forward. And I see Jillian shaking her head because, yeah, I think we need to do things maybe slightly differently than we have in the past, but you're right. I think having it so that we are talking a lot about these things. We've got a beautiful campus. I'm really proud of how our campus looks. We have some significant ambitions for the next several years, but at the same time, we have to recognize that there's no federal infrastructure programs. What we get from the province for deferred maintenance is very, very limited. So we have to take different approaches to how we do things. The residence, for example, is going to be a public-private partnership, our first ever as an institution. Really happy that we're moving down that pathway. The relationship with WeChu is a 25-year relationship that's going to be cost-sharing. So I go back to the issue about partnerships and engagement. It's got to be a foundation for not just how we think about our strategic priorities, but also how we think about campus planning as well. Your point is well taken, though, that it needs to be done not in a vacuum, but it needs to be done collectively with our community.
I was really happy to see it in there because I know that we all talk about it, our office spaces, our spaces to meet with students, and there is a lot of animosity of like, well, why do these people have that space and this and that, and it puts us against each other. Sorry, feedback. And so I'm just really glad to see that that's being addressed in there because even as I went through Aspire sessions, that wasn't one of the things at the forefront of my mind, but I see the incredible value and importance to it. So
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Gordon. Kate Rosser-Davies, Research and Innovation Services. Something you said really resonated with me, and it was that the importance of strategic research plans that don't just get shelved and then nothing happens. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what is going to be the accountability process. Like, is it going to be just like a yearly town hall, a report from the executive? How do we know it's working?
Yep, yeah, no, that's a great question. There's a number of things. And again, I want everybody to be aware that Aspire and the cascading plans are going to live on our website. So there will be accountability measures there, much like we've done with strategic mandate agreement as well. We are certainly reporting back to our community on those pieces as well. But, again, I think, as I've said before, where we failed is we've created these grand opportunities, but where has been that as the decision point for where investments are going to occur? So again, I think we need to set clear metrics, as we've talked about. And again, it's not all about grand challenges. It's going to be about really, if we want to be an undergraduate research leader, we have to make strategic investments in that space. It's not all about doing everything on the edge of your desk. It's got to be about making commitments. We have made strategic commitments into a number of areas at this institution the last few years during a global pandemic, but at the same time, it's Aspire as well as the other plans that will follow will help kind of drive how I make decisions, how all the EVPs and the VPs, how our board makes decisions, but also clearly to make sure that we are having approaches for the goals that we establish, that we clearly communicate those to our community on an annual basis through newsletters, through all sorts of mechanisms that the engagement strategy, what they're thinking about, is intended to do that. But again, I'm really excited about how we can kind of live and breathe this. But I go back to the point I've already made. We have to make sure that the data that we're using to validate these goals or these metrics has got to be data that we trust. And we heard loud and clear through the consultations that people always don't trust the data that we put in front of them as an institution. So making sure that we actually do frame it in a positive way and say that, this was the goal that we established. Our goal was to go from there to here, and we've done it, and this is the data that demonstrates that as well, too. Good. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody found today informative. I want everybody's take-home message to be, if you have a few minutes, go and look at the plethora of data and information on the Aspire website, the framework. There's a summary document already, or that's already been established. Take a look at that. We look forward to your feedback. And again, I want everybody to know that, once these are supported, hopefully by Senate and the board a little bit later on this winter, this is not the last you're going to hear about these things. These are going to be ongoing conversations that we have in our university, and certainly holding everyone accountable for what we propose we're going to do. So thank you.